What are some strategies for eating out when you have a weight loss goal? This is a really good question for you, Annie, because you eat out a lot. Now, this person, they travel a lot.
Hmm.
That travel is non-negotiable. It's happening. The the eating out is also non-negotiable. They have to eat. And this person's also very aware that restaurant foods just do. Just a fact. Most restaurant foods are more calorie dense than if you cooked it at home.
Yeah.
What are your tips?
Well, I'm going to pull a Jen here. Like, how much time do we have? I
Come
will.
on a journey with me.
I do really love this question. I've said this every time eating out comes up in coaching, in our community, on our podcast. I, for so long, thought I had to give up eating out to lose weight. And that felt disappointing. That was like, I don't enjoy cooking. I don't feel like I'm a good cook. I don't enjoy preparing food. I don't enjoy grocery shop. There's nothing about eating at home really from start to finish that I enjoy. So the thought of like taking away my main strategy for getting food in was just like, wow, this is no fun. But as you mentioned, if you're not mindful with your choices when eating out, because of the way food is prepared, because of the way it's designed to be like highly pleasurable, it is often more calorically dense than if you were to prepare it at home. So I think before you even get to the restaurant, if you have the ability to look up the menu ahead of time and start kind of assessing like what is available to you. I think more often than not, people skip this step and they find themselves at the restaurant when they are hungry to maybe even overly hungry. They are easily influenced by their environment, by what other people are ordering, and it becomes a really reactive instead of responsive and mindful decisions. So this isn't always accessible to you. I understand, especially if you're traveling, you might be choosing things kind of on the fly or whatever you can get into at the moment. But if you can, look at the menu ahead of time and see like, what are some balanced options for me? Mm-hmm. When you are there, I would then do not hesitate to customize your order, or even ask if there's items on the menu that aren't currently presented. This is something I think women struggle with because I don't want to be a burden. I don't want to cause too much trouble. I don't want to look like a pain in the ass. But you can do this in a really polite way. Like, I do this often. There is a skillet that I like at a restaurant close to me that it's not on the menu, but I know it's available. They don't have turkey sausage on the menu, but I know it's available. And
Interesting.
I very kindly say like, hey, I'm sorry, I'm going to really customize this order. I'm sure that's like not your favorite, but bear with me here for a second.
As someone who waitressed her way through college, I have to say it's extremely annoying. But anyways,
I have also been a server.
Plenty of people did it to me, and I just rolled with it.
Yeah, I think there's a difference between a demanding,
Yeah,
like,
the vibe is.
And like, do you have this? I'm sorry, So things, I'm looking to make swaps like egg whites instead of eggs. Turkey sausage instead of regular turkey, adding vegetables whenever I can, like those types of customizations to the meal that might not be listed in front of you, but ask. The worst they're going to say is no.
Yeah. I also like to Annie's point, and as she's talking about the swaps, really, I think the biggest swap to be aware of, or the biggest kind of factor that makes restaurant food, so calorie dense, is the fat intake. Mm-hmm. So I'll just share an experience of looking up food, like looking up the nutritional information on a menu. Fine print here. I don't eat out very often, actually, so that's not something I do regularly. For me, I can go to restaurants, make a reasonable choice, and not worry about the caloric intake. But that's because my frequency of eating out is quite low, where Annie's is much higher than mine. So her mindfulness of this area is needed. Mm-hmm. Please don't forget that we are a product of what we do most of the time, not like a little bit of the time. Okay, so that's my little fine print.
Yeah.
But I once looked up the nutritional information on a menu just to see, just out of curiosity. And there was like this quinoa power bowl, and it had like 1,600 calories. Mm-hmm. Versus a lasagna that had like a reasonable amount of calories. And I remember blow my mind. I was like, oh my gosh, if I was going to a restaurant and trying to make a healthy decision, I would probably go, okay, I'll get this quinoa bowl. Feel like being reasonable. I'll bypass the pasta. Like shocking, right?
Yeah.
So really it's just probably there's just probably a heap of dressing in that quinoa power bowl, whatever it was.
Mm-hmm.
But the other point here is if the if that's not either available to you or if it's not even desirable to you to look at the nutritional information, you can also just look at the volume that you're eating, right? So in my experience coaching women, cleaning your plate is an issue. Like it is a big barrier to people in being able to eat less food because they feel like they have to clean your plate. And that is intensified when they're at a restaurant just because of, maybe how much they paid for it, the experience, the other person is still eating. Like there's just a lot of factors influencing that. So it's just to be mindful of that and go, look, I don't have to eat all of this, right? So that quinoa power bowl, I could eat, maybe eating half of that would be reasonable for me.
Yeah.
Type thing. So just always kind of looking for those little nudges that you can make to what you want to eat that makes it more in line with your goals.
Yeah. The other thing I would say about eating out too is to be mindful of any like add-ons. You're either, you sit down and there's chips and salsa, there's a bread basket. People are ordering appetizers. People are ordering dessert, or maybe you get a dessert, or a complimentary ice cream cone when you finish your meal. Or even things that are included with your meal, like sides. Maybe you get a choice of 2 sides, but you really only need one, right?
Yeah.
I really think that like a lot of mindful ordering when eating out comes down to challenging what you see on the menu and not be like caged or boxed in.
Yeah.
Because even when it comes to sides, like there's no reason you can't order 2 sides of steamed vegetables. You don't have to get a potato and a vegetable. You could get a salad and a vegetable. And like those are the kind of, we get kind of tunnel vision because of the way the menu is displayed or written, that we think like, oh, I have to choose one from each category. Well, maybe not.
You also don't have to have the vegetables, and you can just have the potatoes. I just want to say that, like, if we're looking at volume and what do you really want in that moment, and what you don't want to leave the restaurant feeling not satisfied, right?
Yeah.
So for me, I love going out for steak. And like steak and mashed potatoes is one of my all-time favorite meals. And I'm not going to have steak and vegetables. I just won't. It's just not for me. It's just not. I'm going to get the steak and the mashed potatoes. So it's really being open-minded about if there's ways to shift how you, nudging what you can do at the restaurant, and being open to considering all your options, not just ones that might seem obvious, like, oh, no potatoes, but I'll take extra veg, but maybe things that are less obvious. Wait a sec, I want the potatoes, but I don't have to have these vegetables, which, I mean, we know vegetables aren't super calorie dense, but sometimes they can be, like my quinoa power bowl I was going to order, full of vegetables, but also full of oil. So it's just, I don't want to say this to make anybody like scared of food or panicked when they're eating out. Just from a very food neutral perspective, restaurant meals are typically usually more calorie dense. What can you do to nudge it closer to what your goals are without it feeling restrictive?
Yeah. I think my last suggestion would be, to your point about the quinoa bowl, there's something that Tracy Mann in her book, she's been on her podcast before, Secrets of the Eating Lab, she talks about the healthy halo effect. And either when things are presented as healthy, or we have an assumption that these foods are healthier, like quinoa is great for you, right? Like this is a power bowl. It's displayed as something that's really balanced and nutritious, right? That we tend to just naturally eat more of them because it's healthy. I don't have to be as mindful of my satiety or caloric density, right? Tread lightly there. Just keep your eyes open, because as you noted, I grew up in the age of taco bowls, taco salads. I felt like they were trendy for a really long time. And I remember my mom, my aunt, my cousins eating them in abundance because it's a salad. This is healthy. Look at all these vegetables. And now looking at the caloric density, I'm like, you could have had a couple tacos. Like, it's same, right?
Thing. Right. So that's kind of, I like this conversation because often, we talk about diet culture all the time, and we talk about, the harms of diet culture and how messed up our relationship with food becomes. But calories can be part of that. I had a very toxic relationship with macros and calories at one point, where now I just see them as neutral, as information. And that is a part where knowing more, just being aware and knowing more about your food and having a very neutral experience, looking at the data behind your food, actually can be a big part of finding food freedom, to be honest. So yeah, I think that's a really good point. That health halo effect, these health foods, I used to, again, worked at restaurants, so I know. We used to have fruit smoothies on the menu at the restaurant I worked at, and I know they were being made with whipping cream. So it's like, this is like a 700 calorie fruit smoothie. So, it's like the restaurants want you to come back, right? And they want things to taste really good so that you will come back. And that's their number one priority. Not necessarily
your waistline load. Yeah. Yes. Yeah. That's our job to be responsible and manage that, not the restaurants necessarily. Yeah. But great question. So all that to say is you can enjoy eating out and still be on a weight loss journey. And if that's important to you, if that's part of the experience that you want, like, it's possible. It might require some tweaks and some adjustments to either the volume or the frequency or how you're ordering, but it is doable.
Yeah.
Yeah. Good question.